If you've just got into your PhD program, huge congrats. That is a huge accomplishment, and I know submitting those applications was a lot of work, and now you're in your PhD program, so that's awesome. But now, maybe you're struggling to keep up with reading or manage your time, or maybe you're just feeling a bit lost and overwhelmed. But don't worry, I've been in your exact shoes, and that is why I'm sharing 6 pieces of advice that I wish someone had told me during my first year of graduate school, so you can crush graduate school instead of letting grad school crush you. If you're new here, my name is Alexus, and I am a final year PhD student studying biological oceanography at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. We'll get right into it. So tip number 1 is do not try to read everything. This might sound counterintuitive if you want to be a successful PhD student and like hit the ground running in your first year, but I just want you to have realistic expectations for yourself and do things that are gonna make the rest of grad school so much easier. So the first few years of your PhD are gonna involve a ton of reading. Maybe if you're in the US and you have coursework, there's a lot of assigned readings, maybe discussion, or maybe your advisor gives you like a whole file of papers that you should like start familiarizing yourself with around your like research area. But no matter what, there's gonna be a decent amount of reading in your first years and also just throughout your PhD. So it's really important to learn how to read academic papers early on in your PhD. So my best tip is to try not to read everything. You have a lot of papers that need to be read, so don't read like the abstract to the discussion like all in one go. So reading is a skill, and especially with academic papers, they're structured in a way to where you shouldn't read it just linearly. So the best way to read a paper is to like skim the abstract to get an overall idea of what the paper is, what they did, why they did it, and why it was important. That's enough for like most papers. And then you have the introduction, which is helpful if you're not like too familiar about the area, or if you're trying to learn about the area, then maybe you do want to read the introduction to see which prior studies are being cited. Methods, for the most part, you can like skip if you're just reading a paper to see what the findings are. Most of the time you don't need to go into the methods. The results and discussion are really going to be like where all of the key information is at. So the results, you can like scan the figures to see, okay, what are they reporting? What did they actually do? What are they showing? And I like actually starting with the discussion because that's where they tell you, 1, what they found, why it was important, and like where the field is going. So yeah, the discussion is kind of where they like piece it all together, tell you what they found and why you should care. And yeah, it summarizes the paper very nicely for you. Sometimes there's a conclusion, which could also be a good place to start. But the whole point is that for every paper you're reading, it's just unrealistic to think that you're gonna read it like front to back for every single paper. Like you're just gonna waste so much time doing that. That is completely unnecessary. Maybe there are certain papers that are gonna be key papers for you that you're gonna keep going back to, and at some point you wanna read them like pretty in depth. But for most papers, like if you're doing a literature review, scanning is really going to be enough. So always try to read with a purpose. So like stop and think like, why do I need to read this paper? Do I need to learn about like where the field is going, maybe identifying knowledge gaps? Then it would be more important to read like the discussion section and maybe the introduction, so you can see what prior research has been done and where the gaps remain. If you're reading because you're trying to like design your experiment or write a proposal, then maybe you need to like outline certain methods that you want to use. So you'll probably be reading papers more to like look at the methods that they're using to answer those specific questions so that you can do something similar. But the whole point is like to know why you're reading and like which parts of the paper that you should focus on. And you can also just search by keyword, right? Like Control F and then search for like the certain thing you're looking for. Yeah, you don't have to be a perfectionist about it. It's totally okay to skim. That's what a lot of people do. So that should be a helpful tip for you and will save you a lot of time and stress. Also, while you're reading papers, it's really helpful to have a way of organizing them and what like the key findings are or why you read that paper. So for example, I use Notion and I have a Notion page, which maybe I can walk you through right now. So this is my Notion page, and yeah, it shows my reading list with all of my dissertation readings. I've kind of stopped updating it, but when I was in like comps mode, so studying for like my exams and doing reading for my proposal and my prospectus, this sheet was like very helpful for organizing what I had already read, what I had learned from it, and like why I was reading it. So for example, here you can see the type of paper it was, so like article or review paper. You can also see the name of the paper, the status, so like not started, currently reading, finished, or maybe read later. And then I put a drop-down menu for like which chapter it was going to be relevant to. So like just general Eastern Tropical Pacific, maybe it was about the OMZ, maybe it was about copepods, or biomass, export flux. These are like different things that I would be reading for and paying attention to. The author, of course, just to keep track, publisher, like what journal it was in. Sometimes that's helpful to know. When it was published, link to the paper, and a summary. So yeah, if I click on one of these papers, you can see what it looks like and maybe some of the notes that I had taken about it. Okay, so if we open one of these, you can see like what I was reading and like, I don't know, what I had found from it. So yeah, this one, it has everything that I talked about. Summary of the key points that I probably took from like the abstract and the results section. Not too much about this paper. I think I was probably just reading for like, I don't know, something more general. Okay, so this is a very important review paper that I like commonly cite, and you can see that there's a summary about it, so like why this paper is important, why I might need to use it. I've taken notes on the abstract, I've taken notes on the introduction, some summary points, probably like from the conclusion, I think, and then maybe more in depth about other things that I cared about, but things I wanted to specifically focus on. But yeah, just some way to like organize your notes. You could even drop in figures that are important, but some way of like keeping track of the papers that you've read, what you've learned from them, why you would ever cite them for your own research, and kind of just like why they're relevant. Okay, so tip number 2 is to find your groove or like develop your work routine. So one of the best and worst parts about graduate school is the flexibility. So if you're not really taking classes or teaching courses, then you probably just have like a completely open schedule and you kind of don't know what you need to do throughout your day. So it's up to you to like put that sort of structure in there and to figure out when you work best. So for me, for example, I would prefer to like wake up first thing in the morning and get straight into my work at like 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and maybe like do some deep work in the morning, take a break during lunch, and then do some lighter work in the afternoon from like 12 to 4. But that's just me. I'm more of a like early riser, so I feel most fresh in the morning before lunchtime. But it really depends for like different people. Some people like working like late throughout the night, maybe night owls. Other people really like going into campus and like treating it as a 9 to 5. So going into the office, working all day, and then leaving at the end of it, which is nice because you don't have to worry about anything like, around dinner time and during the night. But the whole point is it's not a one size fits all. You really just have to figure out what works for you, maybe experiment a little with like working at different times of the day, maybe going into the office versus like going to a library, working at home, or going to a cafe. just like really finding what you need in order to be like most successful. So that can even be like setting up your work environment, for example, just really making it easy for you to like have some sort of structure and some sort of plan for your PhD work. And this also doesn't have to be perfect, right? I've had periods of time, maybe early on in my PhD, when I was going to campus all the time because I had lab work. So I would just basically stay there like almost like a 9 to 5, working all day in the lab and then going home. But now that I'm in the later stages of my PhD, and I mostly just have like writing and computer work. So I do most of my work from home these days because I'm just way more comfortable here. I get more done. I'm not distracted by other people. I can like make coffee and tea whenever I want it. So for me, this is how I'm like most productive. So just, yeah, figure out what works for you and develop that work routine. And the other important component of your routine is going to be your like rest and like self-care. So what you do outside of your PhD to like keep you sane, keep you healthy, re-energize you after a long work day. So just kind of like, I don't know, figure out what your hobbies are. Like, do you like exercising, going to the gym, surfing, hiking, really whatever it is for you, yoga maybe, or like meditation. I've really started doing like all of these, right? Like I realized that the more stressed I am, the more I need to be spending time like recharging and resting, seeing a therapist, things like that, to just really make sure that I'm like in tip-top shape physically, mentally, and like spiritually before I can show up better in my work and like actually be productive. So I kind of fall into that idea of like, I don't have time to like meditate, or I don't have time to go for a walk. But the truth is, like, you have to make the time for those practices because you need some sort of balance, right? Or you're just gonna burn out and yeah, like suffer a bit. So make sure that you are working hard, but that you're also making some time for other areas of your life that you need to like be happy and fulfilled. Okay, this goes along very nicely with tip number 3, which is to build a life outside of academia. So I know you're coming into your PhD, you're in your first year, so you're probably like super motivated and just excited to jump right in, go all in on your PhD and just like forget about everything else. I know when I came in, I was like all about my PhD, right? I wanted to like be the best, put in the most hours, just like, you know, show that I was a hardworking student and that I really cared about my PhD, that it was something that was super important to me. And I wanted to like stand out as one of the best PhD students in my cohort. So while it's good to want to excel in grad school, you also have to keep in mind that your PhD isn't everything, and you need to put in time and effort into building a life outside of academia that makes you happy. And this is important for like 2 reasons. The first, as I mentioned, like having work-life balance, but also 2 is that if you feel like your PhD is your whole life, that's gonna be a problem because a PhD is full of like ups and downs, like super low lows, times when you're just like struggling, facing a lot of rejection, and maybe nothing is working out. So if your PhD is your whole life and it's like not going well, maybe you're struggling a lot and like having a really terrible time, then a bad day in your PhD is gonna feel like a bad day for your life. So you need something else that's gonna like distract you and take you away from your PhD when the PhD is not going as well. Because there are definitely gonna be times when things aren't going well and maybe things just aren't working out, or like plans are changing, things are getting tough. So you wanna be prepared for that and start like thinking about the other hobbies that you want to do outside of your PhD. Like, what things do you just like to do for fun? Maybe that's reading, maybe it's painting, or like, I don't know, ceramics. So for me, the way that I fill my time outside of my PhD is mostly like being active. So like working out, going to the gym. I'm like currently training for the Honolulu Marathon in December, so marathon training. This will be my 3rd one. Surfing, obviously, hiking. I do a lot of things outside of my PhD. I have like other side projects like YouTube and content creation. More recently, building my personal brand on Instagram, which has been a lot of fun. So this like gives me the creativity component that I don't really get inside of my PhD. But I know for other people, like me, she really enjoys learning languages. Some other people have like taken ceramics classes or photography. So just some sort of balance, right? Especially if you're doing like hard science all day or just like tons of research. You want something that's gonna feel a little bit more creative and yeah, sports, things like that. But you also want to put some time into finding your community and like finding your people. So of course, this can be the people in your cohort or your department that you spend a lot of time around, but it can also be people that you meet because you have similar interests or similar hobbies. So I've met some great people by going to like acro groups. I've also like taken tennis lessons, so you can like meet people through sports as well. And yeah, just like finding some sort of way to find your people, find your community, and yeah, like find that support system, right? I very early in my PhD was like trying to find some people to hike with and just get to know people outside of my program. It was also during COVID, so I met my current wife on Tinder, and that's been the greatest thing because she was also a PhD student, so she knows very well like what being a PhD student is like. She's been there to support me, and yeah, that support system has just been game-changing because a PhD is tough and you need people that you can like vent to and just, yeah, people that can be there for you when it feels like your PhD is just terrible. So yeah, don't forget that you are more than your PhD. So, you know, your life should be balanced and you should have a whole life and like personality outside of your PhD because a PhD is a really long time. All right, really quick, if you're getting any value out of this video, please give it a big like. This helps the algorithm, it helps me, and it helps other students like you that are struggling find this video. And consider subscribing if you want to see more videos like this about PhD life and student productivity. Thank you so much, and back to the video. Okay, number 4, this one's super important, but you want to learn how to say no. And saying no is like such an important skill that I wish I had learned earlier. Because as an undergrad and as a first-year PhD student, I kind of just wanted to say yes to everything, right? Because I was still in the mindset that I'm like building my CV and I have to take any opportunity that comes my way, whether it's like a teaching opportunity to do a workshop, maybe an opportunity to get involved in like a club or like initiative, committees. There's all sorts of things that you can do in grad school, similar to college, right? There's just like opportunities jumping at you left and right. So many people are gonna ask for your help on things, and you just have to learn how to say no. And even though you think saying yes is important for your PhD, the farther along you get in your PhD program, saying no is gonna become more important because there's so many things that are gonna be fighting for your attention during grad school, whether it's like other papers or like mentorship opportunities, maybe opportunities to travel to conferences. And like, of course, all of these things are good for your CV, but you have to like stop and think about, okay, what does my CV look like now? What areas are like weak and could I use more experience in? So maybe if you don't have a lot of publications, you want to prioritize publishing papers, maybe presenting at conferences. If you know that you want to go into a teaching position later, maybe you want to prioritize getting teaching experience and like teaching training. But yeah, you are at a point where you have very limited time and like a ton of work to do, right? Because a PhD is so much work, and then you're adding on like additional responsibilities. So because you have so much work and limited time, it's important that you focus on your goals and the things that are gonna move you closer in those goals of finishing your PhD and developing any of the skills that you would like to get out of your PhD before graduating. So what's really helped me is like to learn how to say no respectfully and politely. So this can look like, I don't know, if your advisor or someone asks you to do something, you can say like, thank you for thinking of me, but I just don't have the capacity for it right now. That's a good one because they can't argue with that, right? If you're saying you don't have capacity to take on something else. Or you can say, thanks for thinking of me, but I only do like, I only serve on like one committee per year or one committee per semester. I'm already doing that, so I can't really take on any more. If it's coming from your advisor, one trick that I've come up with or learned is to say, yes, I can do that, but I also have this on my plate. Which one would you like me to prioritize? Because I feel like sometimes advisors are just throwing ideas at you and they don't really know how you're spending your time or what's on your to-do list, what's on your what's in the queue. So reminding them of the things that you are busy with and making it known that, your time is taken up by these things already. So if they want to add something on your plate, you're gonna have to forget about one of the other things. So being very clear that you have limited time. But yeah, this is just a mindset shift that you have to learn while you're in grad school. And really, in order to be successful at anything, you have to learn to say no more and to prioritize the fewer, more important things that are actually gonna move you closer to your goals. Yeah, doing more doesn't necessarily make you a productive or successful PhD student. In reality, the successful ones are actually doing less and then just doing it so much better. Okay, tip number 5 is to make a good impression in your department, specifically with faculty. So it's really important to learn while you're in grad school that professors aren't just like your teachers. You want to think of them more as your peers and equals, because they're also doing what you're doing, research. They're just doing it at a higher level, right? They're a little bit ahead of you guys. They're a little bit ahead of the postdocs and of the graduate students, but you should see yourself as pretty equal, and you should feel comfortable going to them to have conversations about your work or maybe research opportunities or jobs down the road. But you want to start building those relationships with faculty members, and it really helps to make a good first impression and to show them that you're a good graduate student. Because I remember I was told that professors very quickly are able to find out who the good graduate students are and who the maybe average graduate students are, right? I'm sure if you're in your PhD program for some time, you can also think about okay, who would I consider the good graduate students and why, and which students do I maybe not even think about? And it's important to separate yourself as a strong PhD student, because those people that are just more well-known in the program are gonna get more of the opportunities and they're gonna get more of the help. So yeah, there's certain PhD programs that are just known for being good in their department and maybe doing a lot of outreach, publishing cool papers. Maybe they've gotten a lot of awards, so they're known for being a good researcher. If they go to anyone for help, those faculty members are gonna help them. Maybe those faculty members will even tell them about certain research opportunities, job opportunities. They're just gonna pour more time and pay more attention to the students that they feel are the promising ones. So make a good impression, go to seminars, talk to faculty members about their research, tell them about your research, and just treat them like anyone else, right? Treat them as a peer, as your equal, right? Because you guys are both doing research. They're just a little bit ahead of you and you have a lot to learn from them. So put some effort into those relationships. That's definitely something that I have not done a lot of. And I could really see the value in being one of those PhD students, especially if you're applying for internal funding. Okay. Tip number 6 is to document everything. Hopefully your advisor has told you this before, but if they haven't, then you need to be writing everything down. Like every single thing when it comes to like how you're looking for literature, like notes on certain papers, notes on how you analyzed something or how you did something in the lab. You have to be very organized and like careful about everything you do because you probably think now as an early grad student that of course I'm gonna remember what I did like to make this plot here or what I did in the lab to get this result. Like of course I'm gonna remember it because, you know, I just did it. But there's like many times that I've gone back to my lab notebook and I'm trying to figure out something and I'm like, why did I not write this down? Like, you know, I just wasn't careful enough. And, you know, of course you can figure out what you did or like kind of guess and like, I don't know, you can figure most things out, but it is just so much easier if you write down everything, even if it doesn't seem important as you're doing it and as you're writing it down. So maybe like I checked these files and I exported these files and I moved these figures here. Like just keeping a very close track of everything that you're doing because it's gonna save you down the road. Trust me. It may not seem like it now because you're so early in your PhD, but it's good practice to just like keep a lab notebook, right? If you're in the lab, you should be writing everything down. Or if you're like in the reading and like researching stage, have like an idea notebook, right? So this is a cute one actually that I made, or Mishi made. It says PhD notes. On the back, it says, "You got this." Kind of cute, right? Leave me a comment if you're interested in these notebooks. Maybe we can make some more. But yeah, it's just a notebook where I've like been writing down, I don't know, all of my ideas, how I've been analyzing, where I've been writing down all of my ideas, maybe like notes from either my own manuscript or other papers that I was on or reading. Sometimes it's like a to-do, but yeah, and like lots of times these things aren't really important, but it's just good to like have a record of what I was thinking when I was doing those things, because sometimes you forget and it's good to like track your thoughts and progress over time. So definitely get yourself a little notebook. There's so many options for them. It also doesn't have to be just in one place, right? I have like 5 or 6 lab notebooks from all of my lab work days. I have a few notebooks like this, about this size, where I've written down all of my like research things, more when I'm in the reading and writing and like on my computer. As you can see, I like have notes of the papers that I've been reading. I also have like other things stored in Notion or like Google Docs, but just have a way of tracking everything. So yeah, this might not seem very important when you're at the beginning of your PhD, but trust me, it's gonna save you later, and it's just a really good habit to get on top of in the very beginning. It's gonna make it easier to capture your ideas, your method, your small decisions, and just anything that you would ever want to reference. It's like good to write down. It's gonna make the data analysis, writing process, and like presenting process so much easier. So good habit to get into very early on. So these are 6 things that I wish I had known when I started my PhD journey. It's a long and challenging road ahead, but trust me, you can do it. Just build good habits, keep your mindset in check, and make sure to prioritize rest along the way. And if you're curious how I plan my week as a final year PhD student, check out the video below. See you in the next one.